You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly Requa, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. Bark and Wag is dedicated to protecting our dogs through advocacy, education, and supporting like-minded dog lovers by selling custom pet products. Bark and Wag is excited to announce our new partnership with a Colorado hemp farm to produce a line of CBD products for your pets. Bark and Wag has CBD pet tincture available in 300, 750, 1200, and 2400 milligrams. Bark and Wag CBD is pet safe, no THC, it's made in the USA, and is CO2 extracted. Please check out Bark and Wag's website, barkandwag.com. That is B-A-R-K, the letter N, W-A-G.com, to see our line of CBD and awesome merchandise. We love pooch ideas for podcasts and merchandise, so anytime send an email to Polly at barkandwag.com with your suggestions.
Welcome to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly Requa. Today we're talking to Dr. Laura Brown, owner of Green Tree Veterinarian Clinic in Libertyville, Illinois. Welcome back, Dr. Brown.
Hey, Polly. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on the podcast. As we move into spring and summer and the temperatures are starting to get warmer, what are the signs of overheating in your dog?
So probably one of the first signs, especially if you're out on a walk, they'll just get super lethargic and start dragging behind you. Then they're panting. Now, dogs sweat through their panting, so they're dripping, the fluids are coming off their tongue, and they also sweat through the bottom of their feet. So if they're not, if you're, especially for you guys out there where you're hiking, if you're not going through the streams and you're just out in the, wilderness,
yeah,
and there's no water and it's getting pretty hot, there's no breeze, then it wouldn't take much, but they'll be super lethargic. Sometimes they vomit, panting, and then they just lay down and collapse, panting, like really hard panting. And then they could be kind of pale as well.
Their gums?
If you look at their gums, pick up their lips and look at their gum tissue around their teeth, they could be pretty pale, but probably the more obvious signs are going to be pretty quick. Sometimes they'll have diarrhea and vomiting, but they just collapse. Like they slowly start just dragging. So if you see that, you need to stop and go home. The other thing too is, like I said, they sweat through their bottoms of their feet and their tongue. So if you need to cool them off, you need to get some cool water on the bottoms of their feet. Their whole body would be nice, but if they could at least stand in a stream in the shade and get a breeze, because then when the breeze comes over their tongue that's hanging out a mile, that's going to help cool them off too.
Okay.
And then obviously overweight dogs and black dogs are going to have more problems because the black absorbs the sun, right?
Okay.
Just like, it does in your black car. Your seats are hot versus if you have a lighter color interior, it's not going to be quite as bad. So same for dogs. And if they're overweight, it's huge.
And so if you're in a situation where your dog is overheating and you get to shade, you just stay there
You just stay and wait and try. And like if you've brought water with you, because unless everybody needs a minute to catch up. If their temperature can come down, if there's a way to get their temperature down, it doesn't always turn into something bad. I mean, everybody gets hot, right?
Yeah.
When you're feeling it yourself, and you just need to rest and get in the shade and it may take them a half hour to get their temperature to drop a degree. So you just can't push it. You can't push it until they kind of recover on their own. And as long as they don't get too hot and they can kind of come down on their own, most dogs will do okay. The problem is when they get overheated to the point of they can't move, they're, super, vomiting and diarrhea. That's kind of too late.
They'll die, right?
They die. Yeah, they can die. I mean, even if you get them to the vet, if their temp's 104, 105, that's probably recoverable. But over that is bad damage has happened already to the lining of their intestinal tract, causes issues with their platelets. And the other problem is if you cool them down too fast, that can be bad as well. So you got to do it gradually. You don't want to like dump them in a bucket of ice water.
Okay.
You need to get them into cooler water, fans, sometimes even get in the air conditioning in your car.
Yeah.
If there's no water around,
Okay.
you can crank up the air in your car and just let them breathe have the cool fan air. And as long as it hasn't gone too far, they'll get better. I mean, I'd still take them to the vet if you have an episode where a dog collapses.
Okay.
But if it's at the point where you just know everybody's pushing it a little too much, just stop and rest and turn around.
Yeah.
That would be the ideal time is, it's getting there. You don't want to push it till it's too late.
Yeah. Even here it's starting to get warm. So really you have to really walk in the early morning or late evening.
Well, and that's the other thing is that's also an acclimation thing. When it goes from, you have like here in Illinois, we've had really yucky weather, but yesterday it was like 80 and everybody wants to go out and go. Well, your dogs aren't used to that. So you can't just go out and hang out at the dog park for 4 hours because it's a beautiful day,
Right. Yeah.
So it's just a little bit of common sense about how you feel. And remember, your dog's got a furry coat on. So if you're getting hot, your dog's getting really hot.
I know. People really need to remember that.
Yes.
That's key. Take
your cues, the cues of like, they're just not tired. They're dragging because they're hot. Like, how do you feel when you get hot, right? Like if they start dragging, just stop and find a shade tree. And I just saw something on the news. It was Earth Day. And so the key to fixing some of our environment is to plant some trees in the urban areas where there's certain areas in cities that are, 10 degrees hotter than an area in a different area in the same city because they just don't have any trees. So there's no shade.
Yeah.
That's key.
Right. So,
yeah.
Interesting. Well, once again, thank you for being on the podcast and we look forward to having you back.
Thanks, Polly. You're welcome. Look forward to talking again.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.